I have decided to try something new, and that is to have a guest and talk about some questions that bother many people. And in my first interview, I've got a guy, and for practical reasons, he will only be known as the Concerned Zulu. And he has he has had many discussions and talks with me, and we have touched many issues. And he's got a very interesting view on many of the things that me, as a white guy, sometimes really only guess because I don't really know what the cultural opinions are out there. And we've got a problem in the black communities, and that is that the guys with the brains that are really intelligent, and they are very scared to come out publicly and talk because the political vultures will find them and swoop on them and destroy their lives and destroy their careers in a flash. So listen to this first conversation. Let me know in the comments if you want to see more. Thank you. In this series that I'm planning, I'm going to try and have interviews with people that can give us a little bit more insight into what they have to deal with in political discussions in their living environment. And today's guest is running fairly anonymous for there's practical reasons for it, real reasons that are important, and I appreciate the reasons. So he is my Concerned Zulu, and he will give us a little bit of background of where he's from and what he has to deal with and the steps and the things that he went through in his life in developing to where he is now. And maybe we should just listen carefully when he talks.
Thank you. You've done a bit of introduction there. So first of all, I just want to say I've been following the Skidmarks, and I was very, very interested in it. Although they were controversial, but I'm the kind of person that likes to engage in those kind of controversial discussions in just to find solutions in some of the problems that we are going through in South Africa. So I live in Johannesburg, but I am originally from KwaZulu Natal. So recently, I don't want to mention my qualifications, but I did my university, I did my master's. I live in a suburb of Johannesburg where I suppose middle class people live. So, but I'm still in touch with my people back in KwaZulu Natal. My mom still lives in a township. I see them maybe twice a year. So I guess my friends are people who are, I suppose, in the middle class. Classify them as middle class. So when we have this discussion, you must understand that you are talking to a person who maybe surround himself with those people that you can classify as middle class people. When it comes to these skid marks, they touch me in a lot of ways because I believe as black people, it is my opinion that we do not discuss difficult issues, and we tend to shy away from difficult issues. And I don't always agree with the skid marks, but I try by all means to engage with them. So hopefully, by availing myself to the skid marks, I can answer some of the questions. And my hope with this is to contribute and give my opinion about the black perspective, because the skid marks always talks about black people, black this, black that. So I'm here to answer some of the questions that that you may have, And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to being a contributor. I'm trying to see if I've left everything else in my introduction. So maybe let me get back to you.
Okay, something that comes up a lot in my environment, specifically because of my attitude, that I believe that the only thing that can really ensure a stable South Africa is if we go back tribal. If I say we must go tribal, what do you understand?
First of all, I still don't understand what you mean by that. But I would say that in my previous discussions, my private discussions with you, you've mentioned that, and correct me if I misunderstood you, but you've mentioned that you want almost tribal leadership. In other words, I guess each tribe to be led by a tribal leader. For example, I am from KwaZulu Natal and I'm Zulu. And so my understanding is that I would then, in terms of just government leadership, I would then be led by that tribal leadership instead of, let's say, a national government as we have right now. Is my understanding correct?
Yes, you are 100% correct. The structure of the tribal leadership will totally depend on the culture of that tribe. Some tribes like to operate under a single person, and let's call it a king or a chief or what. Other tribes, they've got a tribal council. So the cultural history of every tribe will dictate what type of leadership they are going to have. And one of the main things for me is that the tribal legal regulation will be based on common law and obviously tribal law. But all this other laws and controls and systems that was brought in by the colonial masters and their handlers, that must disappear, because those things makes it possible for Triple X to keep on stealing all the tribal resources and assets.
Let's talk about it practically. My concern around that suggestion was the practicalities of your suggestion. Can you elaborate further, maybe around how do you vision that kind of government? I mean, here I am. I live in Johannesburg. I was born in KwaZulu Natal. I'm a Zulu man. How is that form of government going to affect me um, as a Zulu man living in Johannesburg? Or let me ask this question: what does that mean for me as a Zulu man living in Johannesburg, a middle class? I'd like to think I'm cosmopolitan. I'd like to think that my values have somewhat changed and perhaps have been influenced since I am, you know, I move in spaces that I move. I interact with whites, Indians, and so forth. So, can you explain a little bit more? What would that government that you're suggesting? How would it? What would it mean for me practically?
Okay, obviously, Johannesburg will most probably belong to a tribe. The area, the land on which Johannesburg is, will belong to a tribe. They will be in charge of the land, but the commercial activities and things that is there is obviously to the benefit of that tribe. And you, as a Zulu man from Zululand, yes, you will be almost like I don't know what is the right word, because if I use the damn word that we used to, then there's people that's going to attach a lot of negative connotation to it. But it is similar to, say, for instance, a German guy that went to a German university and he got his degree in, say, banking. And then he moves to New York to work in New York. He still stays a German guy. And if he wants to vote, he must vote in Germany. But he is working in New York and he is protected by common law. The same with you. Working in Johannesburg, coming from Zululand, you will be protected by common law. Your safety, your right to earn, your right to participate, that is protected by common law. The touchy things when it comes to tribal law will come the moment that you say commit a crime. If you commit a crime in Joburg, you must understand that tribal law that is in play in Johannesburg is going to get you, and not the Zululand tribal law. So when you are in Johannesburg, you have to make sure that you conduct yourself in such a way that you do not run afoul of the law, which is just common decency and it's common sense. But the advantage is that the tribe that owns the land on which Johannesburg is can tell the mining houses that are mining there, listen, you're going to pay us a fair price for whatever you take out here. And if you don't want to pay that fair price, go. We're done with you. And don't come with your contracts and all of that. We don't acknowledge the validity of those contracts. Those contracts was concluded in courts that we do not recognize. It was concluded under laws that we do not recognize. So let's just do business, decent business, or you go and we find somebody else that wants to take the gold out or want to take whatever out. So you will be working freely, participating in the economy in Johannesburg as a Zulu man. But when you want to vote, you have to vote in Zululand. Does that explain something?
It does, although I still have tons and tons of questions from the practicality point of view. But the question that maybe let's take a step back. What would be the objective of that? That's one. And two, how would it change South Africa as it stands?
Okay. Because these tribes, tribal land, they cannot really progress and function as islands, because then you're going to get the situation that there's going to be friction all the time between neighbors. So between the tribes, they'll have to resolve issues that causes friction, but they resolve it to the benefit of the two tribes involved. Not a central government sitting down in Cape Town and making decisions for people living in Kwakwa. How is that fair? How is that practical? Because those guys sitting down in Cape Town, 90% of them don't even know where Kwakwa is. If there's a problem in Zululand at KwaZulu-Natal, nobody in that parliament, maybe one, has an idea where KwaZulu-Natal is. But the issues there in KwaZulu-Natal is vital issues for the population that lives there. They want somebody to sort the problem out but somebody that understands the damn problem because he knows the area, he knows what's going on, he knows the people. And I have a suspicion that once it goes back to that point where the tribes sort their problems out among one another, we will have a hell of a lot less friction. And the most important thing is the guy sitting down in Zululand, in Ulundi, is not going to implement some rule that is going to disturb the people staying in Joburg. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand, but I just want to give you maybe my experience about. I'm not sure if Izinduna. I don't know if you've heard of Izinduna chiefs. Where I come from, there still Izinduna that which are chief that solve issues in communities, and I can tell you that their problem solving is appalling, to say the least.
Okay.
So it's appalling in a sense that they, I don't think they understand the challenges and the problems that a modern South African go through. I mean, I was telling my mom the other day that I would go insane if I were to come with my problems to a local Induna, right?
I
Because
understand 100%.
they don't
I understand.
understand my way of living, my challenges. And in another Skidmark, maybe if you invite me, I'll tell you some of the things that I've heard in terms of just little things like witchcraft. You know, they usually mediate in cases like witchcraft where one neighbor says this one is performing a witchcraft, stuff like that. This is something that I hear when I go home, you know, and they usually mediate in situations where maybe neighbors are fighting over a piece of land and that sort of thing. And the way they mediate these issues and the outcomes is just so appalling. So now, if they were to take this in a larger scale, it's a larger scale, I can only imagine the frustration that people, you know, can go through. I mean, I just can imagine. Let's say, for example, I go back home and I bring my situation, or I tell, you know, as a professional, I go to a local Induna. Um, you know, I would really cut my wrist because you know, of the way they conduct themselves. And some of them are corrupt as well. I can tell you that. Some of them are corrupt. You pay them, you bring a brown envelope to them, pay them a couple of thousands, and then you get a piece of land. So the reality, I mean, I don't see this being done at a larger scale. I'm just giving you a perspective around what is currently happening right now in places where there still is Induna or chiefs in KwaZulu-Natal.
Okay. I have touched it in one of my skid marks. You must understand, if we go tribal tomorrow, the responsibility is going to be on guys like you to make sure that your tribal system is clean. And you cannot have an Induna in an executive type of position that is uneducated and a stupid fool, actually. It is you, the young guys, you guys that are now more educated and more aware of things. It is you guys that now must make sure that those local Indunas and things that they are people of integrity, people of intelligence, and people of uh, character, good character. The responsibility is yours as the community of that tribe to ensure that you have decent tribal leadership, because it is your life that are being influenced by, say, for instance, a corrupt guy. And this is the other thing of tribal. If that Induna is pointed out as being corrupt, the tribe will deal with that corrupt official quick and efficient and move him out, because the people, the tribe, they know who the corrupt guys are. They know. But now today they've got a problem. They cannot report that corrupt guy because they're going to report him to a corrupt police officer, or they're going to report them to a corrupt government official that is going to take it up to a corrupt parliament to try and make a decision about that. And that is for 15 years down the line and nothing has been done. So every tribe will have the responsibility to ensure that their tribal leadership is clean. And it is going to be people like you that will be tasked with sorting your tribes out.
I don't know how that would work though, because I mean, I'm not trying to, we're trying to come up with the solutions here, and I'm trying to also point out the challenges around your suggestions around that. First of all, let's take, I don't want to talk about someone else. Let's talk about me, as someone that lives in Johannesburg. I mean, what you're suggesting is almost defeating the purpose of what you are suggesting, because take me as an example. I live in Johannesburg and I don't necessarily, I come from a Zulu tribe, but I don't necessarily, I wouldn't say I don't value it, but I don't really know so much about Zulu history. I don't know so much about my own people at tribal level. I'm really focused on my shit, just making, trying to build wealth for myself and to grow as a professional, and to make sure that my family is provided for. So making me a tribal or part of tribal leadership, I don't know what purpose it would serve. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Secondly, I can understand where you are going, and I understand what you're trying to say. But my message to you, and I want us to end this now, we're getting a bit long, but the fact of the matter is we will cover this in future programs. The reality is this: each and every one of us will have to play our role in setting our tribal environments up to function properly and to the satisfaction and the benefit of the tribe. So it's going to mean that, say, professional guy like you will most probably find yourself at the moment where you have to make a decision. Am I going to stay cosmopolitan, or am I actually going to get involved in the tribe for the sake of my children? Not for your own sake, because it is your children that will have to live with the decisions that we make. And the children is the future. And look, you and I have had a lot of discussions. We know that the challenges are enormous. But the other side of it is, there is this sinister global conglomerate, which I like to call XXX, that are dead set on removing 85% of all of us off the earth. And they have zero conscience, and they do not care how many lives they have to destroy to reach their goals. And it is my personal opinion that it is only the tribes that can really escape from that stranglehold that XXX has on it, because all the structures that we assume that is there to protect us is actually there to destroy us. But I'm sure me and you are going to have many conversations. And I wanted this one just to be something to give the viewers a little bit of a background of who you are, what you are, where you're from, and what your view is. Because it is my personal opinion that many commentators, especially the commentators operating in the, let's call it the private citizens reporting environment, very few of them has got the guts to cross a racial line or a cultural line or a political viewpoint line and engage an opponent and get honest answers. 95% of them sits there and they just spread a fucking narrative and that's it. But I want to thank you. It was great to have you. And I'm sure we can have many more programs. And I want to invite the viewers to please, if you have comments, questions, comment in the video. I'm sure my guest will watch the comments and will find questions there that he would like to address in future programs. Have a great day. And I thank you for your time. I really appreciate the fact that you were willing to engage.
My pleasure.
Have you got something to say to the people in goodbye?
No, I mean, what was, as you were saying that, I was just thinking that in South Africa, it's important right now for us to engage. I think if I look at your skid marks, they certainly, and I've told you this before, that it could be construed as controversial, right? And you are very animated in your skid marks, and you are passionate about topics that you talk about. But I think for South Africa to move forward, we've got to have people that are able to engage, even if it means, let's say, for example, what you say in your skid mark annoys me, right? Or I feel like it offends me in whatever way, right? I should be able to come to you to say, can you explain to me what you meant by saying what you said? Are you willing to entertain a different point of view? Are you willing to listen to another person? For me, that is the South Africa that I want to live in. To be able to be in your skid mark and be able to challenge what you are saying, and for us to have a discussion about it without having to fight. We can even have a heated argument, but at the end of the day, it should be done with respect. And that is the South Africa I want to live. I want to live in. I don't want to enter into the cat fights and that sort of thing. I just want to be in a discussion, and hopefully, we come to some form of understanding, consensus, or agreement.
Okay, I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm just going to ask you, don't you think that I'm trying to engage?
No, I think you are trying to engage. I mean, my ever since I've followed you, I mean, there was never a point where you have not engaged, right? I've asked you questions, we've disagreed on certain things, but there was never a point where I felt like you were not engaging. You've always respected me. I see you as a friend. And so yeah, no, I mean, even in this conversation, there was never a point. I mean, this is just an introduction. It's unprepared. I don't feel like I was concise in what I was saying, but I never felt like I was disrespected, and I never felt, I was just posing questions, and hopefully in future we can have much more robust discussions on hard and difficult topics.
Okay, and I appreciate that. And as I've said to you when I started discussing the potential and the possibilities of having these types of conversations like we have now, there is, I believe, there is a responsibility on both of us, me and you, to do our part of getting the conversation going. And I'm going to leave the conversation now with an invitation to you. If you have a friend that is willing to participate, please let me know. I think I can handle 4 guests, me and 3 guests at a time. But my experience with those types of, let's call it roundtable talks, is that because you're going in a circle, you tend to not really get into depth on any topic, and everyone just gives their ideas and so forth, unless they make the programs 2.5 hours, which we don't want to do. I don't want to do that because that is not the right thing. And I think that in future, obviously, if you have a friend that is willing to engage, I can handle that, because uh, what can happen in a situation like that is I can be in the hot chair and you guys can question me. What do you think about that?
No, absolutely. Like I said in privately, I think it's important that we get diverse opinion. It doesn't mean that if you get a diverse opinion that you necessarily have to buy what they are saying and everything. It's just to get a perspective, because I think, like I said, I think before we entered this particular program, I said I will give you a perspective of what I see in the circles where I move, right? So you may have information, but because we move in different, I suppose, societies, and we kind of have friends that got different backgrounds, I may tell you something that you may not necessarily have known, etc., etc. So I think, so I agree 100%. I agree with you. If I have someone that I think is going to um, have a valuable contribution to this, to your Skidmarks, I'll definitely invite them, but I'll let you know about it.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, and I really appreciate it. And let's go for it. We've got a challenge. We've got to go for it.
Ngibonga kakhulu mnumzane.